any time and from all faculties in the university. All of these projects present an opportunity for licensing and amazing spin-out companies. So each of our spin-out companies comes with an inspirational story, as well as exciting technology and a mission to create positive impact. So, Andy, next slide, please. So you're welcome to contact us at any point to learn more about what we have in the pipeline, all the technologies, opportunity for investment and licensing. But we have selected very few number here to speak to you about them because of the global challenges that they are actually bringing technologies for. So Tabrix and Impepside, both companies are responding to the threat of infection, microbial infection, that is being highlighted by the WHO. As we saw from the latest pandemic, we're all in it together, basically. So Tabrix developed very novel small molecules to overcome the. In fact, one of the United Nations Sustainable Goals is to get rid of the epidemic of TB by 2030. So Tabrix molecules are also applicable across different infections that are very high in the WHO list, basically. Impepside, on the other side, they developed a very small, very interesting and unique molecules for the antimicrobial, with very unique antimicrobial activities. They're also developing diagnostic and treatment for fungal infections, which are also which we recently held different warnings from the WHO regarding the fungi infections. Both companies present a wonderful opportunity for collaboration with the UAE as well as investment. And I'll pass it on to Helen to talk about some of her companies in the pipeline.
Thank you, Faye. I'm just going to briefly talk about two companies. The first one is called CEDA, which you might have seen on the diagram presented by Andy earlier. CEDA is hoping to simplify electrification journeys for OEMs. It's an advanced battery power management system. So it's not just a battery, it also has a communications module and power modules, and can communicate with a hub system to let somebody know about battery health, for example. Maybe a battery needs changing out, and basically help to manage all of the battery fleet more effectively. Next slide, please. And also the logo is quite small on this one. This is a company called Centera. They have a virtual platform. Next slide, please. That trains medical and health staff. So one of the problems that became apparent during the pandemic actually was that student doctors were not getting enough practice time with patients to work on their diagnostic skills. Often there would only be one session a year for them to interact with an actor type of patient. So the VR platform was created to allow students to practice as many times as they want with avatars that can react in a human-like manner. Feedback has been very, very good on this project. It is a strong IP position, as does CEDA previously. And at the moment, they're looking for a fundraise of £600,000. So they're looking for investors. They're looking to work with any universities with a health faculty that would also like to test this system. So there's lots of opportunities within the science and engineering ecosystem here.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Helen. It's very difficult in such a short period of time to kind of explain the kind of volume of exciting licensing and spin-out opportunities there are. One of the things that we're very keen on doing in our collaboration with the Shargo Research Technology and Innovation Park is to also extend that to form broader collaborations across the UAE to really sort of think about how we share best practice together, how we work together in a collaborative way, how we can get maybe some of these companies to collaborate with research groups or startup companies within the UAE as well. So I think, we would like to see this as a kind of also sort of opening our door to say, please come and have discussion with us. And obviously, the collaboration we have with Sharko is really important. One of the vital things in any innovation ecosystem is to have funding. In the UK, although we're a very small country, it's amazing how much of the funding is concentrated in the southeast of England, near London, Oxford, and Cambridge. That's commonly known as the Golden Triangle. And even though the north of the UK has amazing universities, world-leading universities, in the past it has been a harder place to find investment for some of these really valuable early stage businesses. So we took the decision, along with the universities of Leeds and Sheffield, to form a consortium to create our own investment vehicle. So last year we launched a new investment vehicle called Northern Gritstone, and so far we have raised £215 million, soon to be £250 million, to be invested specifically in the spin-out companies that we have coming out of our region. And it's a huge untapped opportunity to take these IP-rich businesses to scale them and grow them. And ultimately, we are expecting Northern Gritstone to raise in excess of £500 million, which will be really a really exciting and a game-changing thing for our region. So again, I think to create that successful ecosystem, it's not just important to have good universities, good spin-out companies, organizations capable of supporting those businesses, such as Technology Park, such as technology transfer offices, but also have that funding landscape as well, because the rewards for investing in these deep tech, IP-rich companies can be absolutely huge. But of course, this is patient capital. If money is invested now, it may be 8, 10, 15 years before there's a really significant return, but the returns can be absolutely huge. And also, they're incredibly valuable for building an economy. One of the things in the north of England that we have is we need lots of high-tech, IP-rich businesses to help build our economy. And I think it's vital to have those sources of funding. Another source of funding that we have is philanthropic funding. So the university has a huge group of very well-connected, very wealthy alumni. And we've created a program we called Ideas with Impact. And it really addresses the challenge of how do you take a piece of research and how do you move it to a point where it can be commercialized by an organization like the Innovation Factory. So we created this funding partnership with our philanthropic donors. So we said, don't put money in build a building or have your name on something, put money into supporting early stage career researchers to help take their brilliant ideas and to turn them into something that is really, really valuable and really useful. So we had 3 big themes. We have an interconnected world. So that covers things like robotics, for example. This is a particular business which we created, which helps kids across the world learn the skills of programming robotics and building robots. And it really can be game-changing technology, and just the kind of technology that a philanthropic donor can get behind and get excited about, because it helped kids from all over the world, as I said, build their skills. Healthy futures, and of course, we're all interested in our health. We're all interested in being able to support healthcare throughout the world. And finally, we've also got climate emergency solutions. We're all conscious of global warming. We're all conscious of making sure that we impact the environment only in a positive way. And therefore, some of the technologies that we have supported using this program allow us to do that as well. How does it fit in? We're talking now about about ecosystems, innovation ecosystems, why it's strategically important. Well, that philanthropic funding generates a pipeline of opportunities that goes into our process. And then at a certain point, investors can come in and then support those businesses and help grow and scale them. So again, having that philanthropic funding, having support from your alumni, having support from wealthy individuals within the country is a really, really important thing to be able to do. The final thing to talk about, and it's not, you know, everything we need to talk about in an innovation ecosystem, but one really important thing is place, because without incubation space, without labs, without places where small companies and big companies can come into contact, then it's really hard to have an exciting ecosystem to support innovation. So the University of Manchester, along with a very large UK developer, has created a project called ID Manchester. And it is a £1.2 billion investment project that we will be taking one of the university sites and build. That is why, obviously, it's so important to have a partner for us that we can collaborate with, like Sharjah Research and Technology and Innovation Park, because that is something where place is really important, and they can curate, facilitate, introduce people together, which is why we see them as being so important to the your ecosystem. That is really all from me. So I'm going to pass back to Chada, and really happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciating the presentation and walking us through this amazing ecosystem that you have in the Innovation Factory, University of Manchester. I'll be starting with some of the questions, and then we're happy to take questions from the audience here, as well as online in the webinar. So I think the first question that I would have for you, Andrew, is what is your proudest startup spin-out story that actually you got from the factory recently? We've seen the map, we've seen the growth in that aspect, but what is exactly that actually one story that sticks into your mind, and why?
So, there is one business that's really close to my heart, because it basically describes everything I've just talked about. So we have a business called Water Cycle Technologies. So I first met the founder about 3.5 years ago, and he was a PhD student who had developed a new technology, a new membrane technology based on nanomaterials to separate lithium from brine water. So literally water that you get up from the ground, coming up from kind of igneous rock under the ground. And he could extract really high purity lithium salts from this water in a really cost efficient, really energy efficient way. And he was enthusiastic, charismatic, driven by making the world a better place. Lithium is clearly a metal that is used widely in batteries, and the processes that are being used today to extract lithium are really harmful for the environment. The byproduct of this business was pure water. The base technology, apart from the membranes, which were very clever, the base technology was really simple, and it enables countries all over the world to be self-sufficient in lithium ions. Now, that business has received funding. They're working on a number of projects in the UK, and including one down in the south of the UK, where they're pumping hot lithium brines out, and they're extracting pure lithium to be used in batteries for clean vehicles. And it's such a nice story because it does everything we want it to do. It's good for the environment. It creates brilliant social impact because it creates jobs for people. Interestingly, in Chile, where they extract a lot of lithium today, their waste product is really harmful for the environment. They pump basically dirty water into the environment, which can't be used by farmers. In the case of the water cycle technologies, they have pure water, which they can use to their crops. So it has brilliant social impact. And of course, it has brilliant economic impact because it means that we can extract lithium in a low-cost way to help electric vehicles. So that is definitely one of my proudest business launches.
Amazing. That's really great. And I wanted to start with this to kind of like give a flavor of the success stories, I would say, in University of Manchester. And then from there, I'll move to the next question, which is really, I would say, towards the topic of our webinar today. So talking about the IP strategy, right? You've surely basically, once you were thinking about putting an IP strategy in there, really getting the experts in place, seeing how you can share the equity between the center, between the university, and also between the entrepreneurs. I've seen also, which was very interesting, that you keep some of the equity also for later on, when actually when it comes into maybe larger funding cycles or something like that, then you also thought about this. What are some of the challenges that actually you have faced while putting the IP strategy, and you think that you have some lessons learned from that that you would basically pass on to other research centers or other innovation centers as they put their own IP strategy when it comes to that?
Yeah. So obviously, it's very important to motivate inventors to take their research and to turn it into something that can create impact. So we need to do that. But sometimes universities, and I think in Manchester we've been to blame as well, we think too much about the inventors and we don't think enough about the business founders. The business, and sometimes they're not the same people. In a university environment, an academic is working away, they're working on research. They don't particularly want to, and maybe they even shouldn't go and join those businesses. So the challenge is finding that balance between how do you reward the inventors and how do you also have enough spare equity available to reward people. Often younger people that want to go into the businesses, often people who have really valuable skills like commercial skills or operational skills that you need to bring in from the outside. How do you also reward them? So I think in any IP policy, you need to think about that distinction between an inventor and a founder. An inventor, you can probably reward through licensing of the intellectual property because finally it was them that created it. The founders, you need to reward them through performance-related share options because they're the people that are going to grow the business. So I think just getting that balance right is really, really important. And I think if you do get that balance right, it can mean everybody wins. The inventor wins, they're rewarded, they get some income. The founder wins because there's a motivation for them to succeed. The investor wins because they have a motivated team within their organization. And if you get those things right, your businesses will scale successfully.
That's really important. I think the distinguishing that actually you made between the inventor and the business founder is very crucial. And a lot of people actually, like mistakenly, I would say, think that they are the same, and maybe the reward also think actually of the same reward type to each one of them. Although actually the mindset is different, and then also the expectations from each one of them is different, absolutely, as you mentioned. I do have a question, I think, is it related to the to this question in here?
Thank you, Ian. Actually, my question is to Andrew. Actually, a product-based organization can get funding easily in any ecosystem. What about service-based organization? Because they are also required, especially in area like healthcare. Process innovation, service innovation is going to play a major role if you want to contribute into society. So how to encourage service-based organization, especially in healthcare or in education? That is my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something I should have mentioned. The innovation ecosystem is clearly very complex. And of course, the provision of services is vitally important. On the ID Manchester site, we are deliberately encouraging service businesses to come in and support our companies. They are obviously lawyers, they are accountants, they are advertising companies. They can be a whole range of those kind of services, but we also need services around contract research organizations, people that can provide IT support, etc., etc. And having that service ecosystem is really important. We are very lucky in Manchester because we have, first of all, very city research organizations, brilliant assets, equipment, etc., and people with know-how that we can bring in. We also have access to some of the large players, vitally important. But I think your point is really well made. Service organizations are vitally important.
Thank you so much. I think basically this will lead me to my next question, which was, since we're talking about the challenges basically of service-based, I would say, project, also engineering complex focused, right, actually are very challenging in that aspect in terms of the commercialization. So maybe Helen, you can shed the light a little bit on what are the typical challenges that actually are faced when it comes to the engineering complex products as well?
Sure, I'll do my very best to answer. Welcome, everyone. Engineering projects. We handle a fair amount of engineering projects here at the University of Manchester. The main thing we need to remember is that no two projects are alike. Even if they come from the same academic, they can be very, very different ideas and very, very different projects. So also second thing to remember is communication. We need to communicate very clearly with our academics to make sure they understand some of the challenges that we encounter, which can be just because you had a successful commercialization project with us last year doesn't mean that your current project will be successful as well. So those are the two main things. As I said, each project is very different. So a materials project may be very, very different from a chemistry project and so on. But we ultimately always strive to do our best to make sure that we get the best value for money returns for the university.
If I can add something to what Helen said, with a lot of the engineering projects we work, when they set up as spin-out companies, they still need access to equipment. They still need sometimes some technical support in terms of being able to manufacture their product or build a demonstrator. So it's important in any ecosystem that there is also organizations that can provide access to that kind of equipment. A small startup company doesn't have the money to go and buy a scanning electron microscope or a vacuum chamber for manufacturing composites. So an autoclave. So what we have in Manchester, we have created a series of institutes and also research kind of industrial facilities, such as the Henry Royce Institute, which is focused on new materials, such as the graphene, the GEEK, which is supporting the development of new technologies using graphene and other 2D materials, such as the Manchester Institute of Biotechnology. And they allow companies to have access to some of these assets and some of the know-how. So I think, again, coming back, another part of the ecosystem is being able to access that equipment and allow the companies to be able to scale to a point where they can obviously purchase their own assets.
Added clarification, Andrew. Yes, Helen, you want to add something?
No, just to emphasize the point that Andy made, really. Some of these machines that are required are very expensive, very large. They don't have the room for a lot of these pieces of equipment. So we support them and make sure they can access the things that they need.
Absolutely. I think with the access basically that they need and kind of like the access to the resources, my next question is going to be like, you have presented to us several, I would say, arms, right, to the ecosystem of the University of Manchester entrepreneurship and the innovation factor. Does this really mean that every ecosystem needs to have all of these arms, or how these arms are really kind of like coming into the life cycle of each product, and do they have to move through all of these centers, including ID Manchester, including the investing arm, for example? Or what would be your advice, or kind of actually if someone is going to copy your experience, do you think that we need all of the centers that actually, or the arms of the ecosystem in place?
So people are creative and inventive, and they will always try and find solutions. But it is true that the more support you can provide in terms of expertise, in terms of assets, in terms of place where people can be, in terms of a flow of high quality intellectual property, and people with the commercial and technical skills to manage that, the easier it becomes. So if you are starting out building an ecosystem, just think about some of the things that you could support, the way you could support those kind of businesses. Maybe focus on a number of sectors rather than trying to do everything, but saying, what are our companies going to need? What's going to enable them to scale and grow? I always think of innovation. People say, oh, it's a web. Actually, in some ways, it's just a road. And you start over with a piece of research and you end over with a successful scaled company. And if you've got a hole in the road, or if there's a barrier, it's going to be very difficult for them to get across. So I think creating ecosystems, creating a successful journey for startup companies is to think about what do we do to remove the barriers? What do we do to make sure that there is a smooth pathway to a business that can scale? And as I said, to do everything at once is difficult. It's financially challenging, and it's also difficult to find the people you need with the skills necessary to do it. But if you focus on some sectors are quite specific, are quite realistic about what can be achieved and what assets can be deployed, it's perfectly possible to make sure that that's a smooth journey.
I'd like to add one thing here as well. I think it's really important. This is when you really need to tap into your international collaboration. So this is where your ecosystem shouldn't be bound by where you are. You should really expand your connections and relationships so you can also tap into the extra resources and already established knowledge and research centers globally.
And I think this is exactly like what we're doing today between
Exactly.
the SRTB and the University of Manchester. This is really great. I think I will stay with you, Faye, since you added in this. And we talked about basically how it's important to kind of like really cater, right, and kind of like adapt as per the kind of business we have and the ecosystem that's actually in place. From your side, since you work on business development, how do you support from your side the idea, or at which stage you really have your touch, I would say, on their journey?
Okay, so it is really useful to be involved as early as possible, okay, to evaluate the idea, to ensure that they are targeting a real problem, there is a real gap, okay? And that is important because you don't want the resources in terms of time, in terms of expertise or money to be wasted answering questions or growing technology with no actual need. So it's very important for business development to be involved early. I can use also some examples of the companies we have at the moment or the technologies. So Andy, or who has got the control over the slides? Can you go to the slide where we've got Care Loop and EvoPlant? I would like to answer your question by drawing on two examples from our life science portfolio here. For example, Care Loop Health is already established company, okay, and they're doing really well. They are developing a smartphone-based intervention for serious mental illnesses. They are quite advanced, but we're still working with them to help them secure their next round of funding. And we continuously introducing them to our network of investors and help them develop more data if required, then access the network we have. If you compare the support we give to Care Loop we're still giving the same kind of support to EvoPlant. EvoPlant is a project, a research project where they are developed a gene editing method. Of course, this is really important given the climate changing. So it's got a value in agriculture and different aspect of crop management. So we're already working with EvoPlant, even so they are still reasonably early stage compared to Care Loop. We supported them by giving funding for proof of principle, and we are doing the market research to establish who are the best, what is the best route, whether it's licensing or spin out. And also we consider this also as an opportunity for collaboration, international collaboration, basically. So you can be involved at any stage, but the earlier, the better.
Perfect. I think this is really great, Faye, and giving examples, like real examples, into actually what this means. It really helps. I'll have basically, I think, two last questions, and then I'll open it to the audience. Whether, again, if you are listening to us online, you can put your question in the chat, and we would be gladly having it, and then having it to the panelists. Same in here. If you have a question, do let us know. My last question is going to be, first, basically, one question for Andrew and then one for Faye. Andrew, what do you think, basically, how important really that having an IP strategy is really making the startups successful. We talked a little bit earlier about how it's important to distinguish between the inventor and the founder or the business idea. Now, from an ecosystem perspective, how is it really helpful also to the ecosystem, not only to the founders or the players or the owners of the idea themselves or who are actually having the startup, but how is having an IP strategy helpful to the economy, to the ecosystem, and really nurturing, I would say, the wealth generation that we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, an IP strategy can mean lots of things. It can mean what percentage of equity you give to a founder, but it can mean something else. And I'm going to take your, Chad, I'm going to take your question to maybe a kind of a different level. First of all, you've got to, and I think this is a question for the leadership of countries, for the leadership of big organizations, for the people that can deploy resources. They have to ask, do we want to do this? Do we think this is good for our country? And if we do, are we going to invest in it to make it happen? And therefore, the strategy, an IP strategy, can mean we are going to take the intellectual property created by the clever people within our country, and we're going to do something useful with it, and we're going to create wealth and opportunity for young people. We're going to create new businesses, and we're going to create global ecosystems of collaboration. To do that, you need, therefore, all of the things that we talked about. You need clarity about how you reward academics and how you motivate them. You need the investment community need to understand on what terms they're investing in these organizations and what are they trying to achieve in terms of return for their investors. You need place, you need assets, you need resources, you need, most importantly, people throughout the ecosystem that understand the vision and are pulling and working in the right way. And to come back to Faye's point, you need international collaboration. One of the reasons that we were so keen to form the collaboration with Shaga, and we are keen to form collaborations with other similar-minded people, is because we want to share our journey and our experience with them to help creation of more ecosystems within the world, to learn from them as well, because we don't have a monopoly on good ideas. So therefore, we want to also learn, best practice. We want to share ideas. We want to form partnerships and collaborations from an investment point of view, from a technology collaboration point of view, from a know-how and process and system point of view with other people as well. So an IP strategy, I think, is not just about how much equity does academic get or versus founder, or how do we share out the revenue from a licensing deal. I think an IP strategy is really all about the whole picture of why this is strategically important.
Last sentence that you have, which is really seeing the whole picture and how really strategically this is important for the entire nation, for the entire ecosystem. And I think, again, this is one of the main objectives why we're having this webinar here today. Last question to all three of you is, obviously, we've really enjoyed basically listening about the success story and the journey of the Manchester University and the Innovation Factory in specific. What would be your last word or your hope for any research center or innovation center as they are trying to learn from your journey? What would be one lesson, or basically one maybe failure you have learned from that you want to pass on to the other centers, SRTIP included, and UAE centers included?
I can answer that to start with, if you like. I've worked in commercialization for a long time, just over 20 years now. And a previous university I worked for started a lot of spin-out companies in one particular industry, namely semiconductors. Now, this was around 2000, and in 2001, there was a global crash of the semiconductor market, and that wiped out not only our spin-out companies, but other university spin-out companies as well, from like the University of Glasgow, University of Edinburgh, Imperial College. Everyone who was in semiconductors was no longer in semiconductors, to be quite honest. So my message there is learn from failures, spread your portfolio risk. Do not only have companies in one industry.
That's a very good one. Just like your stocks, guys. Spread
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Make sure you
Exactly.
diversify. Go ahead.
Right.
Thank you so much, Helen. Yes, Faye and Andrew?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll go from my experience now in technology transfer, and I worked in different universities in New Zealand and in the UK. But the one thing that the most important thing is having your processes and your systems and your structure very well clarified and set up, having your policy and your strategy also very well set up to be able to support the academics to take their ideas to market. The last thing you want is having a brilliant idea with a very great market opportunity, but being stuck in the process or not having the right vehicle to take it forward. Okay. And also, and this just takes us back to everything that Andy talked about, which is basically having that ecosystem, that structure, these resources in place.
Structures, processes, make sure that everything is actually in there, because you don't want the idea to just actually fail because you did not have a process in place.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Faye. And then the last one from you, Andrew.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things is to have a clear mission as to what you want to achieve, because the mission helps you make good decisions. The mission shouldn't say, I'm going to create lots of patents. It shouldn't even say, I'm going to create lots of companies. The mission should be about creating impact, unlocking the potential that exists within people, and making the world a better place. And I think if you have that shared mission, everybody throughout the ecosystem, from the most senior leaders through to the most junior people, understand what we're all trying to achieve together. And it helps us make good decisions, and it makes the chance of success far higher.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I think that's basically if one thing everyone commends the UAE for having is the great vision and mission that they have. So we appreciate all of your insights in here. We'll open it now for the audience, and we would basically take any questions in half. Yeah, we have many in here already. Great.
Thank you for all that. I just want to find out from the University of Manchester's strategy, what incentives do you have to encourage students, professors to commercialize or IP their research or ideas? What incentives do you have in place?
Yeah, so first of all, let me take the academics, because it's slightly different for the students. So we have essentially what we call a revenue share scheme. So if we license intellectual property to a third-party company, then the academic will take quite a significant part of that income. And that can be many millions of pounds, actually. So that is a financial incentive. As I said, sometimes they will buy a new car, and sometimes they will return some of that money to invest into their group. The money the university retains from the licensing income, we also feed back a significant portion of that money into their research groups, and also to support further innovation. So that's a really good incentive. The other incentive, of course, is when we create a spin-out company, we reward both academic inventors and academic founders with equity, so shares in that business as well. And so as the companies grow, as they increase in value, and at some point maybe there's an IPO and there's an exit or a trade sale, they can also be financially rewarded as well. So that's academics. In terms of students, we have a separate organization called the Masood Entrepreneurship Center, which focuses specifically on student entrepreneurs, and that gives them training and support when they want to set up companies. Most of those companies aren't IP rich, so they could be maybe apps or kids that want to set up clothing companies or whatever it might be. The ones that are IP rich come to us, and then we would treat them just like any other spin out, but we are much more generous with the students. So we give them a bigger percentage of the income from licensing, and we give them a bigger percentage of the equity share in the business. So that is a couple of incentives which are mainly financially focused. also within the leadership team within the university recognizes entrepreneurship, creating new companies, licensing as also important for academics as they progress in their careers as well.
Thank you, Andrew. We have another question in here.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Greet. I work for Vito. It's a Flemish research institute in Belgium. My question is I'm not a researcher myself, but what I've noticed within a research entity, academics, they're more focused on basic strategic research, and you guys, you reward the academics who do more applicable and more contract research. How, as a research institute, do you find the balance within your academics to both do the strategic and the basic research and trying to spark that innovation to do the applicable and the contract research? I'm always interested to see that.
That's a really good question. So obviously research is funded. Research needs to be funded. So in the UK, we have funding councils, which essentially is principally government money, but I'll come on to talk about charitable funding as well. They often, when they are giving out research grants, they also want to see a pathway to creating impact. Now, in particle physics, that's a bit harder. So therefore, they will look at, some of the fundamental things. But if you're working really in anything in life sciences or anything in engineering, at least the funder wants to see some view as to how that research is going to turn into something useful. And I personally work very closely with the national funding councils, and it's a discussion we have all the time as to making sure that we try to keep a significant amount of funding focused on things which are going to be beneficial, because universities, as I said, learning for learning's sake is important. Often you get serendipitous discoveries which can benefit humanity, but very often as well, learning is also, and universities are also seen as engines for the economy. The charities, we work a lot with some of the big charitable institutions. So we work with a charity called the Wellcome Trust. We work with a big charity in the UK called Cancer Research. And of course, they are very interested in getting real world impacts from the research that takes place. So their funding streams are often dependent on to be able to demonstrate how we're going to get a benefit from it.
So much. We have a third question in here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the nice presentation. We are a tenant in SRTP, and we are a startup techno R&D company. Our mission is to make impact towards the renewable and sustainable energy, especially in the field of the hydrogen. I have, first of all, a small request that if you can share with me, with any of the SRTP team, the membrane, the lithium membrane, extraction membrane, the one that you mentioned, that is really something we might need in the future. The second thing is, the question is, at what level or what is the expectation your cooperation will be with SRTP? Especially that we are based in UK and we are in SRTP.
So, first of all, of course, I will make sure that we pass Ian the details of Water Cycle, and he will be able to pass those through to you. So our collaboration is I think is going to be complex and growing over the years. So first of all, we're going to share our views on the way we work, and we're going to try and basically share best practice between the organizations in terms of our thinking around ecosystems, in terms of thinking around funding. We are also going to look for specific opportunities where there are companies in Sharjah or there are companies in Manchester, in the UK, and there might be some synergy between those businesses, and we're going to try and put those businesses together. So, for example, if we have a new therapeutics business and they want to do some contract research in Sharjah, we could do that. If we have a new electronics, I mean, the battery management business could be a good example where they have some development work and they would like to form a collaboration with maybe a company such as yourself to see if they can do some joint collaboration. We are going to also look at investment streams as well. We are always looking for investors for our companies, and therefore it is an opportunity for investors from the UAE to maybe put some money into some of the companies that we have, and obviously maybe bring some of that technology into the Middle East as well. So I think there are lots of things that we are going to explore doing, but they're going to be helped by mutual participation in events like this, working together, we're trying to find synergies, because we collectively have the same kind of problems. We've got technology, we want to take it to the market, we want to make the world a better place. We are always working out the best ways to do that, and that is really the fundamentals behind this relationship.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think we had one more question in here, and then we'll see the online audience also if they have any questions.
Hello. Okay, my seat. Sorry. Yeah. So thank you so much for the presentation, everyone. And so my question will probably be a two-part question. So you've mentioned in the final, I think, statements where processes are very important, especially when you're dealing with IP and maybe innovation, right? So how do you make sure that processes do not hinder the process of innovation? And when you're looking to seek IP, it becomes sometimes innovators, they don't look at these nitty-gritties, they just want to innovate. So how do you make sure you avoid redundant processes? And part two would be talking about these processes. How do you make sure? So I come from a corporate background, and we look at the bottom line, right? So how do you make sure that when you look at IP, you do not, knowledge sharing is something that takes place, collaborations take place, and you do not want to keep the innovation to yourself. So sorry for the two-part question, but that's it.
No, that's okay. Two great questions. So first of all, something very important, and it's obvious, but it's true, is the process is there to serve us, not we're there to serve the process. So what is really important is that we look at how that by having a process, if we didn't have a process, it would be anarchy. But there are sometimes, there was a project that we were talking about yesterday in one of our team meetings. We say, this is something we can fast track. There's some questions we've already answered. We feel sufficiently confident that we can move it through. So, and that is a decision that is made by the senior management in the organization, where we can jump a process if we really need to. So we have some flexibility. However, coming to your point, processes can be kind of boring, but they also protect us as well. So first of all, a terrible thing would be is if we identified a new opportunity and we went through our process and we suddenly found out that we didn't own the intellectual property, and it belonged to somebody else, and we had licensed that to a third party. So we do need some level of rigor in being able to understand what we have, understand who owns it. Or we went through the process and we'd forgotten to ask some really important questions. We didn't look at some competitors. We didn't really understand the market size. We didn't really understand the competitive advantage. So I think, and this is really about the skill of management. They have to use the process as a tool. It's not something, as I said, it works for us, not the other way around. We've got to be pragmatic when we need to push stuff through quickly. But we've also got to have a certain level of discipline to protect us from things that could be really risky. Like, for example, we don't own the intellectual property, or we haven't protected it. We were talking about a business, a new software business actually yesterday. And danger is that if we don't protect that intellectual property, the value of that business is diminished. And therefore, the ability for investors to put money into it is diminished. And therefore, that kills the opportunity. So we have a responsibility to be both lean and flexible and nimble, but also have some rigor.
Rigor is important that it comes to commercialization piece, and it's really a balance off, I believe, between kind of like the innovation and keeping it open for the inventors to be themselves and to invent, and then also to have some rigor for the commercialization piece if they want it to be profitable at the end. So thank you, Andrew, and thank you for the question as well. Do we have any online questions that would like to get in place? Right? Okay, so oh, okay, he'll be online for us. Thank you. Here we go. You have a question here.
I'll check on the online thing. No, thank you very much. And I completely agree about sort of the golden triangle, as my family comes from Manchester. To your question about, yeah, to your, the diagram on its, was it stage and gate? And I noticed that there's recycle, kill, and go. I'd be interested to know, are there any sort of thematic areas that you see of reasons for recycle or kill that you sort of see on a regular basis as you go through that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things in academia, often research can be kind of like intellectually challenging, but not useful. And therefore, what we often see, I will tell a story to demonstrate it. The Manchester is quite famous for graphene. The two guys who basically characterized graphene won the Nobel Prize, Andre and Kostya. And there was a lot of research activity taking place and still is around graphene, and it can do some really cool, interesting things. But there's also some research where the research is intellectually interesting, but not that useful. So I had a guy come to me and he said, I've created a new membrane using graphene. And I said to him, so how does it compare with other membranes? You know, its flow rate, its stability, its, its cost of production. He said, it's graphene. I said, no, I'll ask again. So compared with existing products in the market, how's it compare? He said, yeah, but it's graphene. And I said, nobody cares. I said, if we are going to commercialize this, you've got to understand its commercial competitive advantage against existing technologies. People don't care about what a clever piece of research it is, even though it is clever and it's brilliant what you've done. They care about the whether they can use it, whether it's better. So we encourage our team to ask in a really polite way the so what question. So I can do this, so what? And because I think that, and therefore, if we ask that question correctly, we can not put projects into our system which are intellectually elegant but not very useful. Does that answer your question? Maybe, and perhaps the second bit is that you said recycle. Sometimes we will see things and they look really good, but we simply don't have enough data. And in order to really, particularly in the life sciences sector, if you're developing new therapeutic, for example, you really need quite good data to be able to convince an investor to put money in. So we might say, go back, gather some more data, come back, and we'll push it back through the system.
I think in any project and in really, I would say something that you are pursuing, data and questions and asking the right questions are super important indeed. So thank you so much, Andrew, for that question. I think we have one last question. We'll take it in here and then we can call it off. Thank you.
I just want to understand from going back to looking at the bigger picture. In all this, I'm referencing to, for example, China, where the Chinese government almost called out for industry, university industry collaborations. Is that prevalent in your case in the UK? And if not, what can we borrow from that to, for example, China did that to increase production and also feed into the economy. How can that be either replicated or borrowed to the UAE or the UK?
Yeah, I think it's essential. If you are going to if you're going to scale a technology, there is nothing better than having an industrial partner that can give you access to their knowledge around quality, production, sales channels, really identifying how to take cost out of a particular technology. So therefore, anything a government can do to work with small startup companies, to work with universities who have intellectual property that can be licensed, to help accelerate that is really, really helpful. I know very little about universities, apart from having been to university. I spent most of my working career running technology companies, and therefore only came into the university reasonably recently. All of my career, we collaborated with universities. We identified really good, high quality technology, and then we acquired it. We licensed it, or we purchased companies. And I think anything the government can do to encourage that collaboration, to fund it, to give tax breaks for companies that are doing that, I think is hugely beneficial. And I think we've seen that in the way the way that China managed to grow their economy so quickly. It was because they actively encourage that kind of behavior. We do that in the UK. Yeah. My belief is my friends in government, I was encouraged, let's do it more. But I think it's essential. Faye, sorry, you want to say?
Yeah. I just want to say two things here. So basically, the way I see and my experience with technology transfer, it is called technology transfer, but it's also technology and knowledge transfer. So it is the output, the commercialization can be licensing or can be spin-out companies, or in my opinion, it also comes in the form of contract research, working with companies to help them solve their problems with the university IP. So one of the things that the government did, and I used in my previous role, is something called KTP, Knowledge Transfer Partnership, where the government invest in a project for the company, done by the university, solve a problem or to create a new technology that the company can use in the future. There are different programs from the Innovate UK that support the collaboration between the industry and the universities, and it is a form of technology transfer.
Thank you. I just want to comment to that because I think it's a very fair question and very good remarks from Manchester as well. I just want to tell you, we are a research institute and we are right in the middle. That's how we do it in Belgium. So Vito, we have the universities who do the basic research and most of it. Then you have the industry, you have policy, so the government, and you have society, which is always impacted. And Vito, we function right in the middle. So what we try to do is to have the researchers do and focus on what they need to do, listen to the industry, and we are creating an institute right in the middle. And with all of that research, we're trying to guide policy and government towards that, because I think one of the biggest issues that there is now, there's lots of technology and lots of research, but policy does not always allow for it to be spin off or to be successful. And the industry needs to bring their knowledge as well towards the policy, but towards the universities as well. So in Belgium, that's how we do it. We have a few, I know, we have 3 companies who are in the middle, one a bit more on policy, one more on the makers, and one more on the materials. So really to be in the middle of that ecosystem, right in the middle of that ecosystem. So it might be something interesting to look at if you're interested in that.
I think the fact we're calling it an ecosystem, it actually means directly that the research centers, universities, and industries are actually all working together. Absolutely. And I think what you've said, and society, of course, at the end of the day, absolutely. At the end of the day, we want to impact society. We want to make sure basically we're generating wealth. We're having a prosperous economy. So all of that definitely at the end of the day deals towards it, I would say. Any last points on this one, Andrew?
Well, I mean, first of all, Belgium is very lucky in the sense that it has an excellent technology transfer group at the University, KU Leuven. We work with them very closely, and they really are exemplars in how to do this correctly. So it's not a bad place if you're going to do that kind of thing. I think that collaboration, again, it's coming down to policymakers and governments being able to create an environment for entrepreneurs, scientists, investors to succeed in, and it has hugely beneficial impact on society. So I think everything's been said on this. It's getting people to work together and having that common vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think with that, with collaboration, with ecosystem, with these brilliant words, which we really actually hope that it will always prosper in Manchester, in UAE, in Belgium, and everywhere in the world, where entrepreneurship is really the right path now to be taken by entrepreneurs and by nations towards the generation of wealth. We would like to end this webinar with that. We thank you so much, Andrew, Faye, and Helen, for your contributions, your inputs, and your great insights towards the questions asked today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here with us in here, and also sharing with us all your knowledge, your experience, and your thoughts towards the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. These are their contact information for the Manchester University Innovation Factory, if you would like to be in touch with them. And here in Sharjah, any last words from the team here? Ian?
Caught me by surprise there. I'm going to stay here for about 10-15 minutes. If you've got any questions at all about the park here and how we operate and the businesses we get involved in, then please come and speak to me. And a final mention from me about the Innovation Factory. Andrew, Faye and Helen, absolutely fantastic listening to you and listening to your experience. We've learned a lot from it. And I really look forward to the collaboration that is going to happen between our two organizations going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another last word as well. Thank you.
Just a last things to thank you, Shada, again for having been a fantastic moderator today. Thanks a lot for supporting us every time and being such fantastic. So I think we can just applaud all our people online, Helen, of course, Faye, and Drew, and of course, Shada. Thanks for attending. Thanks to all of us online, and keep in touch. We have lots of fantastic events coming. Thank you. Thank you so much.